This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Angelica Slinska. I'm your host. And today I'm joined by Ben Kingston-Hughes, who is manager of Inspired Children. He works with vulnerable children and he's a trainer and also an author as well. So thank you very much, Ben, for coming onto the podcast and joining today.
Thanks a lot, Angelica.
So today we're going to be talking about why children need joy, creativity. We're going to be talking about imagination and immersive narratives as well, and what that looks like and what it means. So Ben, I think it would be great for you to start off by maybe talking a little bit about your new book, actually, because that's been recently published on joy.
It's a rather interesting topic to write about. So I've written a book about why children need joy, because working with some incredibly vulnerable children like I do, it's something I've seen week in, week out, absolutely changing lives. So for years, I've had this thought in my mind that this was a really important thing, but I've never really dared put a pen to paper, well, typing, because it sounds a bit nebulous, it sounds a bit abstract, and I didn't know whether I could not sell it, but as a concept, that's an actual concrete concept, rather than just, oh, that's nice, the children are enjoying themselves. And if you look around sort of any kind of agenda working with children, the word joy is absent from almost every aspect of working with children. So
that's
the
a really good
EYFS
point.
Doesn't mention the word joy once. Obviously, curriculum doesn't. Interestingly, I did a podcast with an Australian psychologist recently, and she was saying that the New Zealand version of the EYFS mentions joy 5 times in the document, whereas ours in the UK doesn't mention it once. So from observations of children, I started to look into the neuroscience of joy, the biochemistry of joy, and why it's absolutely crucial that children experience this. And so, yes, I've written a book all about it. And I know it sounds like I'm having a midlife crisis and telling everyone to go up a tree, but I'm not. It's a concrete process that every child deserves and needs to have.
Because it's important to really go into that depth of why it's important to have joy in terms of, like you mentioned, neuroscience, things like that, because otherwise people think it's a little bit flowery. And like you said, people don't really, I guess, trust that and respect it as much as reading books that are very much rooted in science and evidence, etc., and things that sound a little bit more serious, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what I've had to do. I've had to unpick the concept of joy and portray it in a way that is scientific almost. I can tell you what let me know that I could write a book about joy. There was a really specific thing happened with a child. And up until that point, I'd always thought that it's not something I could possibly write because of that nebulous abstract concept. And I witnessed a child on one of our adoption activity days, and these are a way to find forever families for children that might have been passed over for adoption. So some children are statistically less likely to find forever families because they have a neurodivergent condition, for instance, or a disability. And that means they're statistically harder to find forever families for. But we do an adoption activity day, and it gives an adopter a chance to meet the real child. So if you're sat in a den making magic potions with a little girl with Down syndrome, you're not seeing the disability, you're meeting the real child. And these projects have created more forever families than any other project that's ever been tried. And at one, I think it's about a year and a half ago now, there was a little boy sat on an adopter's lap making magic potions. And that's a beautiful moment. Already we're starting to step back because we're not needed anymore. That is what we want from these events. But what the little boy doesn't know is the magic potions are going to light up, because we've got a really expensive bit of kit. Actually, it's not at all. It's a torch in a box. So we've put an old torch in a box. So when you put the potion on top of it, the whole thing glows, and it's just green food colouring and glitter. That is all it is. So he put the potion on the box, and he saw it glow, and he started shaking so violently with just this look of joy on his face that he ended up squeezing the potion as hard as he could. And of course, it shot straight out the top, hit the adopter in the face because he was just looking at that point. Green food colouring all over his white shirt. He's going, "Oh, does it wash off?" I'm going, "Yeah, of course it does." It doesn't. And they both just burst out laughing together. And at the end of the session, that was an expression of interest that led to a forever family for that child. So that's when I knew I'd had these thoughts about joy being important. I'd mentioned my training courses, but now I knew it was real. It's not a made-up concept. It was so physically real that he had to respond in a visceral way by squeezing that potion in joy. So that's when I started to put pen to paper, and and I've written a book about joy, which has been a very rewarding experience. So yeah.
And what a fantastic story to tell, and the reason for writing that book. And it's so
well, I'd seen it
valuable to
happen,
so
things
many
like that all
families.
the time. As you can imagine with my job, working with vulnerable children, those are the moments that count. But I'd not seen it so real, so visceral, that I knew I was onto something. And obviously the downside of that is that children who don't experience joy in their lives, I've explored some of the catastrophic effects. And working with the children that I do, I work with asylum seeker children, I work with children who've experienced war and trauma, disabled children and families. When you see what an absence of joy does to a child, it is heartbreaking. And in fact, there's a chapter in the book that is very dark. And that's not to put people off reading it, but I think we need to know. We need to know that a life absent of joy is a life that child is really struggling. And in fact, that's an understatement. So there are some dark bits in the book, but a lot of it is very positive and very, very joyful, because it shows just what positive adults can be for their children, and how just one joyful adult can absolutely change a child's life. So it's been a pleasure writing it.
It's so nice to hear that you really enjoy that journey of writing, actually, because I speak to many authors and they do talk about their kind of start to writing and, that long journey that they go through. And sometimes it can be really difficult, I guess, but that's probably kind of going off topic a little bit. But it's great that you've got another book published, because I have got here it is actually your first book. A Very Unusual Journey into Play. And that's really interesting because you've got lots of examples of real life kind of, I guess, we call them case studies, but real life situations, and like the things that you just mentioned, your experiences, and lots of kind of little jokes here and there as well, which I really love. And that in itself brings joy to the reader when you are reading about early childhood, and it's not just the usual kind of dry topics that you may sometimes come across, which can be quite heavy. Like we mentioned, if you're reading about neuroscience, it can come across a bit dry.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, but I'm not naturally a very funny person. Just ask my family; they'll attest to that.
Really?
But I have realised, quite early in my training career, that if you make your learners laugh, they automatically become more engaged and learn more. So I've tried to put in the funny stories about children. There are, really funny little stories. They're just even the simple things. Like a few months ago, we were doing dinosaur makeover, where you get the toy dinosaurs and you give them makeup and sequins. And a little boy called Joshua managed to stick sequins to the pet rabbit. It was just one of those moments that was just genuinely funny because the rabbit looked so grumpy. But in the new book on joy, I've actually started to research why that happens. So there is a whole chapter on humour and laughter and how it helps embed learning. And it's not even an optional extra. It's that this is one of the optimum ways in which we learn, is if we're enjoying it. And I've recommended that all secondary school teachers have mandatory stand-up comedy training because it would make learning much more effective. It activates all sorts of different bits of the brain. And it's one of the ways that we calm ourselves down and bring our amygdala, the fear center of our brain, back under control as quickly as possible, is simple moments of laughter. So I've talked a whole chapter about humour and laughter. I've explored the fact that for many children, humour is not it's not the adult sense of humour. It's about poo, isn't it? And I think instead of crushing like some adults do, we need to celebrate it. You're not going to get biting political satire from a 3-year-old. So their humour is about poo and bogies, and why not? I think that's some of the best books to read to children. Things like The Dinosaur That Pooped a Planet. When you've got 30 children shouting the word poo, they're not looking out the window. They're not disengaging in literacy. They are fully in that moment and loving it. So. Yeah, whole chapter on humour and laughter in the new book.
I'm really excited to read it, actually. And when you talk about really engaging children, that reminds me of what you talk about in terms of immersive narratives. And that's something that my partner took from one of your workshops, and that was back a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago now, and he still talks about it and mentions it every time because it's made such an impact on him, and how he sees play with his nieces and things like that. So I think it's just so, I know you mentioned before that it's quite a simple concept, but actually it's important to really understand why, like what it is firstly, and then maybe seeing that we do it in practice anyway, and actually why it's so important, and what kind of little things can we make sure that we do to make it more immersive and more engaging.
So this all comes from many, many years ago. We used to I used to work on an inner city project, and I worked with the early years section, so 2 to 5s, and then I would work with the after school club, and then I worked with a youth centre as well. So I actually worked with every age of children throughout the day. And we used to do these make-believe scenarios from early years all the way through, where the staff would pretend it was just something that we did. And it was just the culture within that staff team that they would dress up as pirates or superheroes, or we would pretend a spaceship had crashed in the grounds of the project. And I started to see some really incredible benefits to children of being in that immersive world, that make-believe world. So, for instance, we had a little boy with a stammer, and it wasn't medical; it was environmental. It was the abuse that he'd experienced in his younger life that meant that he struggled to form sentences because of his stammer. And he, when he was dressed as a pirate, stood on a table and shouted, "Let's save the mermaids, lads!" because he could now speak, because the pirate version of himself had much more confidence. And we started to see things like that happening. And it seemed to happen the most when everybody was caught up in the make-believe, when all the adults were there. So many, many years ago, I was doing a speech at the International Play Association. They deal with them all over the world. So I applied to present a paper when it was in Iceland and somewhere else, and I got it in Cardiff. So I didn't go far afield. But I presented this, but I needed to give it a posh name, really, because I wanted to give it a name that people go, oh yeah. So I called it Immersive Narratives, which is stolen from the advertising industry. So in advertising, the immersive narrative is when you don't just buy the toy, you buy the Happy Meal, or you watch the film, and everything's, children buy into this whole
that experience.
So I called it that. And all it means at its simplest is make-believe scenarios where the adults and the children join together to keep that make-believe going. You don't have the premises officer walking through going, oh, what you silly lot up to? You don't have Deirdre hoovering up in a corner. You all maintain the make-believe, and you create these scenarios, and they can be incredibly simple, or, I mean, once you get used to them, you can really go all out. You can go on whole imaginary journeys. You can go to the moon and spend ages collecting dinosaur eggs from the moon. Yes, we know dinosaurs don't really live on the moon, but it's imagination. So over the years, I've done this a lot. And with some of our groups of children, honestly, the benefits, when you see them being this superhero version of themselves, or the pirate or the space explorer, you see just the light in their eyes. And it's a really wonderful thing to be able to do.
And it's fantastic that you talk about it bringing more confidence to children and really kind of recreating themselves, I guess. And supporting them with any kind of triggers and traumas, I guess, that they may be experiencing as well.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. In fact, when we do adult training, we quite often get them dressed up as superheroes, and you'll automatically see adults in their superhero costume, but they're suddenly standing much more, they're standing more mighty, if that makes sense. And that's just purely the costume does that. So when you've got a whole setting pretending that, the Queen's going to arrive, and we've got to lay, put all the bunting up and stuff, and then Bernard the chef is dressed as the Queen and turns up. That really happened once. He'd got a mustache. None of the children mind. Queen had a mustache. So that it just makes something magical. And I think that's something that is missing from a lot of our children's lives. When we look at, deprivation in particular, we look at what's missing from children's lives. It is little things like bedtime stories and, the just those moments of imagination. And so when you give that back to children, that's when you see genuine magic happening. And, the simplest one you can do is to just put 2 chairs in a row, sit at the front, and get the children to sit behind you, make sure they put their seatbelts on, and they'll pretend to put seatbelts on, and then you just fly anywhere in the world or beyond, to Mars, to the bottom of the sea. And it's just 2 rows of chairs. Everything else is make-believe. So, that's an immersive narrative. It's when the staff and the children work together to create the make-believe scenario. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's great having examples like that and how we can actually put it into practice. And it's not just kind of the theory behind it. What was I going to say? So you talk about imagination, and I think you talk about creativity, but that's kind of different. You kind of differentiate those?
Yeah, they are often used interchangeably, sort of imagination, creativity. I suppose at its simplest, imagination is the internal exploration of really making stuff up. Imagination is that ability to see the world in a different way, and creativity is how we apply that. And one of the things I'm really keen to get across about imagination is that there's a tendency to assume that some people are more imaginative than others because they're into the kind of the fantasy, the unicorns and the rainbows and stuff. And people think, oh, that's Doreen. She's the imaginative one, so she reads the stories. When actually, when you unpick what imagination really is, it's a uniquely human function that we don't believe any other animals have, or maybe just they're starting on that process, but humans take it to the next level. And actually, everything that makes us human requires imagination. So, even simple things like number, if you see the number 7, that's 2 lines when written down, isn't it? But we don't see 2 lines as humans. We see an entire concept of number. And the reason we can do that and animals can't is because we can pretend things are things they're not. And that's where symbolic representation comes from. And that underpins everything from mathematics to complex language. The letter A is a circle and a line when written down. But to us, add a few more A's, a couple of N's and a B, and you've got the word banana. And then you add that to some more words, you've got whole sentences. So the imagination is the ability to pretend things are things they're not. And it doesn't matter whether you're fairies and unicorns, and you watch Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, or if you like Married at First Sight and EastEnders. It doesn't mean that one type of person is more imaginative, because we're all imaginative, because it makes us human in the first place. And even if you're sat there right now wondering whether that bit of pizza is still fresh in the fridge, or whether your partner's nicked it, that being able to think of the future in a conscious way is something that your animals can't do. So even that is imagination. So when I work with groups of children and other adults will say, oh, no, they're not very imaginative, that's not true. It doesn't matter what their disability is. They're still using imagination. It's just in a more literal way. I hope that makes sense to people listening. But yeah.
Just a very quick and a very exciting announcement from me. The Voice of Early Childhood Conference is back. After the success of our first one, we have organised another one on the 16th of March, 2024. This will be a day full of learning, sparking reflections, sharing, discussing, and networking. Our overarching theme, which fits perfectly with the ethos of the Voice of Early Childhood, is advocacy, agency, and change. So we have Dr. Nathan Archer as one of our speakers, kicking off the conference with his keynote all around advocacy and activism in early childhood, followed by the rest of our brilliant speakers on the day, who are Adam Marriage, who will be discussing leading your team through Ofsted inspections, Dr. Stella Louis, talking about school readiness and intellectual readiness, a question of balance, Ben Kingston-Hughes, exploring the power of play, Dr. Valerie Daniel, creative pedagogical practices to encourage agency, Ruth Swales, unpicking how do we construct our own curriculum, Helen Bately, talking about the foundations of early writing, and a special feature from Dr. Sue Allingham, Dr. Sue's Surgery, which you can book into throughout the day. This is an opportunity for a one-to-one Q&A session with Dr. Sue, so really make the most of this special feature by coming prepared with your burning questions, whether this may be around practice, leadership, Ofsted perhaps, or anything else you can think of, you can ask Dr. Sue. We also have a whole conference discussion which is focused on sustainability in early childhood in the widest sense. So we'll be focusing on sustainable development goals, which we will discuss, debate, and really unpick what this means for early childhood and our responsibility as educators within this. Linked to this, there will be a student posters showcase around the Sustainable Development Goals, where we can engage in more discussion and reflections, really focusing on linking theory and academia to practice. So there's lots in store for you on this really exciting day. And as always, you can expect on our conference day opportunities for shared reflection, discussion and healthy debate, valuable CPD, a diverse range of speakers, a safe space to share your practice and thoughts, a relaxed atmosphere, plenty of opportunities for networking, a selection of exhibitor stands to explore and ask questions, and of course, fantastic food and refreshments as always. And for 2024, we really had to step it up a notch with a choice of workshops, so a leadership or a practice strand to choose from, a start of the day and an end of the day keynote, interactive sessions, and of course our Q&A with Dr. Sue, which is new. So if this sounds like the kind of conference and early childhood community that you would like to be part of, then grab your tickets before they sell out. We do have limited capacity. And if you haven't already heard, you can get 10% off to use at checkout by signing up to our newsletter. I've added the link in this episode description where you can sign up for your code, find more info about the conference and speakers, and access our Eventbrite page to secure your ticket. So I will see you in March. Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear that difference. And I guess when you put it in that way of everybody is imaginative because it's part of like symbol representation and things like that, it kind of intertwines it all with learning and learning, almost like learning rules that we have, you know, in terms of what we have as letter representation and phonics and all this kind of stuff. And it gets so much more complicated when you really unpick it and look into it. And I guess which really interests me, going back to you writing books, do you sometimes find yourself going down like a bit of a rabbit hole on things like this when you think, okay, I need to really unpick something here, and then you start to go into the depths of a certain topic and it gets really complicated? How do you kind of rein it back in?
I think that's kind of the second edit, isn't it? So the first edit is stream of consciousness stuff. And then you go back, and when you're tightening it up, you think, actually, I've gone down a road there that is actually probably going to disengage the readers because it's just, you know.
It's getting too complicated.
What I love, I mean, my favorite bit is when you read totally different things, but you see links between them. So you can think, hang on a minute. And sometimes you can think of a link and you Google it and nobody else is making that link. And it's quite bizarre when you find that and you think, well, hang on, if this is true from this field and this is true from these, then these have to be connected. And I love that. That's the most exciting thing about writing and researching it, is you just find these incredible links. And then you read something really exciting that's weird as well. I don't know about you, but I love the weird stuff. And then the research on imagination that says that imaginary experiences activate the brain in the same way as real ones. So if you close your eyes and imagined a picture, it actually activates the occipital lobes, the visual processing bits of your brain. And don't you think that's the most exciting thing ever? It means if you work with children, you can, early years, you can imagine anything and it's actually working the exact same bits of the brain. So stuff like that blows my mind. I love things like that.
That is so interesting because like people do say like transport yourself to this world and imagine this and that, and you really feel like you are there and really immersed. And I guess it kind of taps into maybe perhaps even like well-being and mindfulness a little bit as well, because you're not kind of there in that moment. You can kind of transport yourself to somewhere else. Yeah, and that's what we find. I mean, that's why we do it. We do imaginative play with our vulnerable children, because in that moment, they're not thinking about their vulnerability. They are in that moment. And our remit is a bit of a weird one, but our remit with Inspired Children is for children to just get a chance to be children again. That is it. We don't have an educational remit or a therapeutic remit. We're giving children back their childhood. And imaginative play is just a key way in which we do that. And we just have so much fun pretending to be space aliens and anything really. There's no rules to it. There was a lovely one where I do a play champions course, which I tend to do with schools and special schools, but anyone can have the course. But it's a 5-week intensive play course. So it's the longest course that I do as a trainer. It's lovely to do. But I get them to do gap tasks. And one of the gap tasks, after we've talked about imaginary play, is to try and do an immersive narrative with your children in between the course. And this one lady said she couldn't do it. She said, that's not me. She says, I'm not imaginative. I can't do that with my children. I said, well, don't worry, that's fine. I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to do. I said, instead of that, try and build a giant thing out of cardboard boxes, for instance, or do something creative in that way, because that's just as imaginative. Anyway, next week she turned up and went, I did one. I was like, what? She says, I did an immersive narrative. And all she'd done is dressed up as a leopard in a leopard skin onesie with a mask. And she crawled around in this was nursery. She crawled around outdoors
and all the other staff had taken the children to the window, going, "Children, quick, come to the window. I think there's a leopard in the garden." And the children are now already excited. And there's this leopard walking around the garden, but it's got an injured paw, so it's limping. So the children go out and then they pet the leopard, and they're quite nervous because it's a leopard, even though it's obvious it's her. That's the key. You still know. And then they bandaged the leopard's paw. And then the leopard waved goodbye, and they all went back inside again. And she said it was one of the most rewarding experiences of her career. She absolutely loved being a leopard, even though initially she'd said she wasn't confident to do it. And then her manager was there, and she said, "Yeah, it was one of the best sessions we've had." And now all the other staff want to do stuff and dress up and do that. And then so one of their staff, quite an older lady, happens to have a full-on fairy costume. Like not to do with work. This is her own.
Just
so she's the queen of the fairies the next week. And then so it can be really simple. Just leopard skin onesie and a mask, and give children a magical experience. And that is lighting up their brain like a firework display of activity. So lovely stuff is immersive narratives.
And it seems like you said that it's so good for the adults as well, not just the children. And when you say it is so simple, it really is just what practitioners do every single day anyway, in terms of engaging in role play with children. And is it sometimes perhaps important, I guess in what you do, the adults spark those play interactions and stories often, so it is more adult initiated? And I know we've got this thing in early years, that balance between child and adult initiated.
Yeah, that's a really thorny question, especially if, like me, you work in the playwork industry as well, because there's a belief that children should always initiate and direct their own play. And there are sessions that I run where that is exactly the case. We will dump a bunch of resources in the middle, and we will just step back, and those children will dive in, and they don't need us at all. We're there if we need them. But when you work with really vulnerable children, it doesn't always work that way. And so we do initiate a lot more of the play. We start playing ourselves sometimes so that children can see the possibilities inherent in the environment. And in terms of early years, I think thinking about it as a adult-led and child-led is actually less useful really than thinking that it's a continuum. You're constantly changing your interaction. So from one moment to the next, you could be on the floor with children crawling all over you. You could be buying a slug sandwich from their slug cafe, and then a minute later, you've stepped back completely because the children are now fully engaged. So in early years, it's more about a constant stepping in, stepping out, making sure that you're there, making sure you understand your purpose in that play, that it's not detracting from the play, and being always prepared to step back and let play continue unadulterated. So that means without the adults taking over. So, with the adoption days in particular, we learned quite early on that we need to set some stuff up first. So instead of leaving just big bags of material to make a den, we actually half build a den. Well, actually now we build a big, massive den. We put loads of dinosaurs in it, so the children just run in excitedly. We half build some things out of cardboard boxes. We leave stuff out. The provocations are we've started the process. There's an interesting thing happened before Christmas, actually. The adoption days are always hard, just emotionally hard. And also there's a lot more adults than children. So it's a challenge to do what we do in that environment. And they're amazing, and we love doing them, but they're a challenge for our staff. There was one just before Christmas where the children ran in, and without any support, anything needed at all from us, they just dived straight into our area. They were running in the den. They were getting the scooter boards out. And the best way to describe it was like water flowing into cracks. They just instantly found the play that was at their level. So we had a meeting afterwards to identify what it was that made that one so much. I mean, we do get them like that, but then sometimes children come in and they're looking around, don't know what to do. They're holding on to their foster carers. And that's what we're there for. That's our job. So we had a meeting, and one of the things that came up was that all of my staff, it was a new staff team, for some reason were already lying on the floor, already playing when the children came in. And because of that, the other volunteers from the adoption side of it, they were already on the floor interacting. So the children ran into an environment, saw nothing but adults playing. There were no adults stood up, arms folded, no adults kind of looking grown up. And we think that was a key factor in those children having the confidence to just leave their foster carers and go. And actually looking at attachment theory, that fits in, doesn't it? The children are more likely to explore their environments if they feel emotionally safe. And one way you can do that is be on the floor, not drunk, on the floor doing your job. You can be, we're now looking into how we even make our body language more conducive to children being able to play freely. And because what we want is water in the cracks. We want that. That was brilliant. So yeah, interesting thing.
It does make so much sense in terms of going down to the children's level. And we always talk about that in terms of making children feel comfortable. Yeah. So I guess in that sense, it makes perfect.
Yeah, well, we've always done that. There. But I suppose other members of staff would wait till the child came up to them and then get down to their level to interact with them. And that's brilliant. Whereas on this one specific event, they were already there before the children arrived. And I mean, there were other factors as well. It was a really nice hall. The environment was great. The adopters, we'd brief them. We always do. We brief them and we tell them to get down to our child's level. But one thing we tell them is if you play, even if there's no children there, they'll see you as a playful adult and they're more likely to want to join in with you. Whereas if you stand around and wait for an opportunity, then you don't look like that. So they all just instantly played regardless of children. And so it was just, the atmosphere was lovely. It was a really nice one. And it was a combination of lots of different factors, but it was that playfulness that everybody engaged in that made those children go, this is a safe space. I can run around with dinosaurs now and I don't feel scared. And it was lovely to see. And there were lots of expressions of interest as well, which will eventually lead to forever families for those children. So it's brilliant.
I guess it reminds me of what we talked about before we started recording, actually, about being approachable and relatable.
Yeah.
And that's probably a big factor there as well, isn't it? In terms of children being able to relate to that adult and see kind of themselves in that, I guess, comfortable around the adult straight away, because they can see that they are like them and they also play and they also like to play. And it's not kind of that, those power dynamics between the child and the adult don't necessarily exist.
Yeah, and it's something we've addressed early on in the adoption days, which is we tell all of the adopters to smile, stay on a child's level, and let the child lead. Let the child lead the play, and use support. Don't take over. And it's only 3 simple things, but it makes a massive difference. I mean, our body language is quite often we don't know that we're giving off a closed body language. If we're nervous, and of course adopters are nervous on these events, that's only natural. So that body language is in children are like the most skilled social scientists on the planet. They're keyed in to the adults around them, their body language, their attitude, their mood. They've got mirror neurons, brain cells specifically there to copy, but also to work out whether they're safe or not. So if the adult's nervous, the child automatically becomes more nervous. So it's really important that we consciously check our body language and make sure that it's open and welcoming. And and I work in environments where you look around at the adults and they've forgotten to tell their faces to smile, not because they're bad people, but because they've had a stressful day themselves. And so the children are now modeling on that. And then I work in other environments where you've got the most amazing atmosphere. I was in a baby room and it was the baby left over because I was doing training for the baby room workers, but there's always a baby that the parents are late for, traffic, whatever. I think it's just they want another 5 minutes without their baby. Anyway, so this worker walked through holding the baby and singing, "Somebody's pooed their nappy now." And I thought, well, there's only me and the baby in the room, so I hope to God it's not me. But I just thought, what a lovely moment, because I personally, as a parent, I've treated the pooey nappy as a stressful thing. It's your turn to change him. No, it's not yours. And you argue, don't you?
Yeah.
And, and if you've got a boy, they can wee in your face. That's a stressful thing. Whereas she, that one amazing early years worker who has no idea how amazing she is. No, she won't know. Was turning even something that other people find stressful, like changing a nappy, into a moment of joy for that child. Is that not just a beautiful thing to see in early years? And it's just a little song, about poo. So we're back on poo again. I'm so sorry. I've lowered the tone of your podcast, haven't I?
That seems to be the topic of conversation with Ben Kingston-Hughes. Then that's what I should introduce the episode as instead.
I did a webinar last night with hundreds of people, and it was an evening one. So I thought I'd tell a slightly rude story about breaking wind, and that people have been messaging me all day today to say, I hear you've been breaking wind. Sorry, we might need to edit that because without the story, it now sounds really bad. But
no, you'll have to tell us, what is the story.
I'm not sure it's appropriate for your audience, but I will share it, and then I will leave it up to you whether you edit it. But I was. I don't eat sugar. In my 50s, I've tried to cut down on sugar because it's middle-aged men. It's the belly fat, all of that. Trying to keep things up. I've cut out biscuits and stuff. But I do miss chocolate. So my wife's bought me some sugar-free chocolate. It's chocolate orange, brilliant stuff. It's delicious, but I've not had chocolate for ages, so I stuff the whole lot in my mouth. Love it. Now, it turns out that malitol, the sweetener that they use instead, has one side effect, and that is excessive wind. And I don't mean a minor, tiny inconvenience. I mean extreme wind. So I'm doing a webinar on Zoom, and I'm in so much pain. My stomach is cramping. But I can't break wind because the microphone will pick it up, and I'm talking online on Zoom. So I'm actually sweating. I'm in so much pain trying to hold this wind in. And so the break came in the webinar. I instantly muted the microphone, and then I couldn't help it. I let go, and it lifted the roof off my shed. It was so loud and long. It was the most, honestly, because I've been holding it in for an hour. I then looked up and saw that my screen had gone black. And I was like, oh, why is my screen black? It's because I'd turned the camera off, not muted the microphone.
Oh, no.
So this entire webinar of over 60 people, all they'd have seen was my screen go black, and then this noise just go through everybody's households. And it's just the most mortifying moment of anything that's ever happened to me on Zoom, and which to just look up and go, oh my God. So that was the story I told.
That's so funny.
Texting about it today. So I'm guessing that one will haunt me and follow me.
Well, I know you've got a really good mic, so yeah, I could just imagine how loud it must have been.
Yeah. People said, well, what did you say? I said, well, I didn't say anything. What could you say? I said, okay, 10 minutes later, just carried on because of what?
And pretend it never happened.
No, you can't go, oh, sorry about that. That was me breaking wind. Can you? So I just carried on, and it's humiliating, but never mind.
Well, on the topic of joy, at least you can now, and it's not, you said it was just the day before, so you can actually talk about it and not get too ashamed, hopefully, and make it, something that is a bit of a funny story.
Well, again, it helps people learn the important bits more if you can make them laugh. So yeah,
if you can be relatable as well. Yeah, well, I think that's probably a good place to end on. Is Ben making us all laugh. So thank you so much for all of the things that we discussed, and really kind of going into explaining what immersive narratives mean, and hopefully giving people the confidence to take part in that with their children, whether it is children in a setting or their own children at home. I think it's really valuable.
Oh, and the new book has come out early as well. So we're expecting the book to come out in January, and it's actually come out already. So yeah, a very unusual journey. No, sorry. Why Children Need Joy is the new book. And there's some really lovely stuff in there.
Fantastic. So yeah, a very unusual journey into play, and Why Children Need Joy. So both of those books I'll link to this podcast episode, so listeners can find Ben's books, and also more about Ben's work on the Voice of Early Childhood website. So yeah, thank you very much. I think that's everything, really. Thank you so much for joining, and it's been great having you on. It's been great that you made me laugh, and I'm sure the listeners will laugh with us as well, especially when we're talking about joy. I think it's so important. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Angelica.